From Arnold to Ronnie and every amazing twist and turn in between, here they are, the best of the best, the most memorably epic moments in the history of bodybuilding. Number 12. Pumping Iron Breaks New Ground, 1975. Much of the filming of the ever-glorified bodybuilding flick Pumping Iron, starring among others Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, Lou Ferrigno, and Mike Katz, didn't actually take place in the Olympia, but the film's chronicling of the 1975 Mr. O did more to bring the sport to the masses than any other single event since the contest's inception in 1965. If you'll recall, viewers are tricked into thinking that Big Lou actually has a chance of beating Schwarzenegger. Not quite. Number 11. Flex Wheeler Attack by Ninjas. Coming into the 1997 Mr. Olympia, most observers thought reigning Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic champ Flex Wheeler had the best chance of defeating an injury-riddled Dorian Yates. Then, 48 hours before the event, the number one contender arrived at the host hotel with his left forearm and hand bandaged, claiming that 6 days prior he had been the victim of an unsuccessful carjacking. He supposedly knocked out a gun-wielding assistant, and the second foe came at him brandishing nunchakus. Wheeler, a martial artist, said he overwhelmed that man too, but not before suffering wounds that would keep him out of the Mr. O. Few in the bodybuilding community bought what came to be known as the ninja story, with most believing Wheeler had concocted it in order to avoid competing out of shape. Tellingly, Wheeler left the incident out of his 2003 autobiography. Yates won the 1997 Mr. O, his sixth and final Olympia victory. Number 10. TONYA Knight stripped of title. During periods when the IFBB had tested for performance-enhancing drugs, numerous competitors have failed. Sean Ray had to forfeit his 1990 Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic title when he was one of 4 whose test came back positive for steroids. Nasser El Sonbati failed a diuretic test at the 1996 Mr. Olympia and lost his third-place finish. Jay Cutler was informed he had failed a diuretic test after his second-place finish in the 2001 Mr. O, but that result was thrown out when it was revealed the testing didn't follow correct procedure. Perhaps the most shocking result was the disqualification of TONYA Knight, when it was learned that someone other than Knight herself supplied her test-passing pee. As reported in the March 1990 issue of Flex, after IFBB officials presented strong evidence against her, Knight admitted that she sent a surrogate to take a mandatory drug test administered before the 1988 Miss Olympia, where she finished 4th. In another strange twist to the tale, the surrogate was a former girlfriend of IFBB pro Mike Quinn. In a ruling handed down in November 1989, Knight was suspended, stripped of her 1989 Miss International title, which went to runner-up Jackie Paisley, and asked to return her 89 Miss International and 1988 Miss Olympia prize money, totaling $12,000. After the scandal, she returned to the stage in triumph in 1991, winning the Miss International title, this time without incident. Knight went on to compete in only 2 more pro contests, the last in 1993. Number 9. Jake Cutler almost defeats Ronnie. The 3 previous years, Ronnie Coleman had seemed unbeatable, but in 2001, after the first 2 rounds, he was beat. Sporting new mass and striations, Jay Cutler took a seemingly insurmountable 6-point lead after the prejudging. The buzz spread. A new Mr. O would be crowned. That fateful evening, Coleman won both the posing round and the pose down with straight firsts, barely relegating Cutler to second at the O for the first of 4 times. Boos and cheers thundered, debates raged, and another epic rivalry was born. Number 8. Promoter arrested. In the early years of the 20th century, pioneering bodybuilding promoter and publisher Bernard McFadden was arrested twice. The first bust, for lewdness, was in 1905 for one of the earliest bodybuilding shows, this one at Madison Square Garden featuring men and women. The women exposed little more than arms and legs, but that was enough to close the show. The second bust was in 1907 for a medical story about venereal disease in McFadden's Physical Culture magazine. McFadden was convicted of obscenity and sentenced to 2 years of hard labor, but he appealed, and when the case caused a national uproar, was pardoned by President William Howard Taft in 1909. Number 7. Results questioned at 1981 Mr. O. The year after Arnold Schwarzenegger's 7th victory, the Olympia was immersed in controversy again. See controversy number 1 on today's list for reference. This time it was 1976 Mr. O Franco Columbu who returned from retirement to win another Sando in a Mr. O contest run by longtime friend and previous year's winner Arnold Schwarzenegger. Columbu's thighs were notably downsized, the result of a strongman injury years prior. The winner was not at his best, but Chris Dickerson 2nd, Roy Callender 4th, and Danny Padilla 5th were. And to say Tom Platz 3rd was at his best would be an understatement. He shocked the bodybuilding world with new upper body sinew and legs, already the world's best, that even today have not been equaled. Number 6. Joe vs. Bob. The fiercest bodybuilding feuds have been fought not by men in posing suits, but by men in business suits. The longest-running war of words and lawsuits was waged by the Weider Organization /IFBB against the Hoffman Organization /AAU. Bob Hoffman resorted to printed results at the height of the strife in the 50s that alleged everything and anything nefarious, including treasonous complicity with communists. By the 60s, the Weiders won the war, securing the biggest names in the sport with the promise of impartial results and a focus on physiques over Olympic weightlifting. Number 5. Mohamed Benaziza passes away. After winning the 1992 Dutch Grand Prix, his 8th pro win in 3 years, Mohamed Benaziza collapsed backstage. 7 hours later, on October 4, 1992, he passed away of a heart attack at age 33. Diuretics Momo ingested drained his body of the magnesium and potassium his heart needed to beat. His was the most tragic diuretic-related casualty, but others, including Mike Matarazzo, Paul Dillett, Flex Wheeler, Tom Prince, and Mustafa Mohammed, have gone from stages to hospitals as a result of extreme dehydration. Number 4. New champions crowned. Prior to William Bonac being unable to attend the Arnold Classic, one key point that was promoted was that all 4 divisions' champions were defending their titles. 2 of those divisions saw new champions being crowned. Alabama's Terrence Ruffin snagged the Classic Physique title from defending champion Alex Cambronero, who finished in 2nd place. Ruffin was last year's runner-up, so he got revenge for that result 1 year ago. The other upset was in the bikini division. Jennifer Dory was able to defeat reigning champion Elisa Piccini and fellow favorite Lauralee Chapados to take the title. She was the last Olympia's runner-up. With champion Janet Leag out of the lineup, she was now the clear favorite to win the Olympia thanks to that victory. Number 3. Racism tarnishes Mr. America title. The AAU launched the Mr. America contest in 1938, but it wasn't until Chris Dickerson in 1970 that a person of color won. During the first 32 annual renditions, great black bodybuilders such as George Payne, Melvin Wells, Art Harris, and Elmo Santiago were denied the title. Despite his unparalleled muscularity, Sergio Oliva lost the Mr. America 3 times, including 1966. The year he switched to the IFBB and won their Mr. World title. Cuban refugee Oliva reportedly lost the 1963 AAU Mr. Chicago because he didn't speak English like a born American. Joe and Ben Weider and the IFBB were instrumental in breaking down bodybuilding's racial barriers. They heavily promoted black bodybuilders like Leroy Colbert in the 50s, and Harold Poole won the IFBB Mr. America in 1964, the year Oliva finished 7th in the AAU version. Number 2. Arnold Schwarzenegger returns. The one contest still debated more than any other is the 1980 Mr. Olympia. As a surprise entrant, Arnold Schwarzenegger returned after a 5-year retirement and, smaller yet leaner than in the early 70s, won his 7th Sandow. At the athletes' meeting prior to the show, a verbal and nearly physical confrontation erupted between Schwarzenegger and Mike Mentzer. Mentzer, then 28 and seemingly on the fast track to mega success, finished a baffling 5th and never competed again. Fans still speculate that the contest was mixed in favor of the sport's most popular pro, that Mentzer, Chris Dickerson, or Frank Zane should have won, or that the Oak, although not at his best, was still good enough to deserve the victory. Number 1. Arnold's 2021 opening comments. As is custom, the host of his namesake competition took to the microphone before the finals began in 2021. Arnold Schwarzenegger spoke about the importance of having the Arnold Classic last year in spite of the ongoing pandemic. He and the other organizers felt that the extra investment and effort into hosting the competitions would be worth it in the end. Part of his explanation included a connection to his roots, and it led to a roar of approval from the crowd in attendance. "I was born a bodybuilder and I will go a bodybuilder," proclaimed the 74-year-old former Mr. Universe with 7 Olympia wins and a long list of other titles to his name. Many people know him as an actor, former governor, and activist, yet he personally still identifies himself the same way that the athletes gracing his stage do, as a bodybuilder. It was a great moment of unity. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you another time.